Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. I had another request, and that request was for Titan's Revenge. So I will be going over every single item, but if you guys have a specific request, I'm more than happy to oblige. So right now, we are looking at two very, very awesome throwing spears. It is important to note that throwing spears do not have sockets, and they cannot have sockets added to them. So remember that when you're looking at throwing items, is that they are what they are, and they really don't have, you can't do a lot to change them, which is rather unfortunate because they are some pretty amazing items. And when you look at them specifically from the standpoint of, hey, this would be really cool if I could add just this one more effect, and they don't really have them. So. But Titan's Revenge is a pretty amazing set of javelins, and it has a relatively low level requirement, only level 42. It does have a relatively high dexterity requirement of 109, and the Ethereal version is 99, so not as bad. And when we look at these, we're going to see there's some pretty sweet effects on these. Now, this particular javelin is generally used with the ability Lightning Fury. Lightning Fury is the specific ability that people really go for when it comes to Titan's Revenge. And there are some other options, most notably thunderstroke javelins, which is an interesting option as well, and we'll go over that another time, but not right this second. So right off the bat here, you'll see that these have some pretty nice damage. They got throw damage of 79 to 212 and one-handed damage of 79 to 155. And because they are Amazon only and because they are a spear, you will get the really nice block chance with these. So if you're using these with a shield, you will have some really nice breakpoints on your blocking. If you did not know this, Amazons actually have a huge penalty to using any weapon which is not considered a stabbing weapon in their hand with a shield. So if you are using any kind of weapon that classifies as a swinging weapon, which is a rather large number of weapons, you get a huge penalty to your block recovery. So Titan's Javelins has pretty decent damage, but it also has a really nice quantity stack size, which is a pretty big deal because there are some rather low quantity stack size throwing items. So we got 140 quantity on this, which is great, and that is static across any ones that you will find. We also have a +2 to Javelin and Spear skills, which is very nice, specifically to get you some extra Lightning Fury, or maybe some Jab if you prefer a little bit of physical along with your effects, or maybe you've put 1 point into Impale just so you can hit something really hard one time and run away. Who knows? But generally, if you are any kind of Javelin Amazon, of course having +2 to Javelin skills is going to be nice. It also has +2 to all Amazon skills, which is going to help you out with your passive and magics, as well as your bow and crossbow, if you happen to have any bow and crossbow skills worth using. But of course, I'm absolutely silly because, of course, it's a javelin and it's on a javelin, which means that despite the fact that it gives you some pluses to your bow and crossbow skills, you can't actually use any of your bow and crossbow skills while you're wielding a javelin. Brain fart. So basically, when it comes to this, you've got an effective +4 to Javelin, and you have a very, very nice +2 to your passives. So not exactly awful as far as plus skills is concerned. And even if you just wanted to use this as a buff stick, like for instance, let's say you were a bow Amazon, right? And you're running along, and you want to summon your Valkyrie, but you'd like your Valkyrie to be a little bit of a higher level. You could swap over to a Titans. Titans would increase the level of your Valkyrie by at least 2 points, and then you could tag it along with something like a Spirit, and you could get +4 to your Valkyrie on a non-Javelin based character, which is not bad. Having the ability to summon a slightly stronger Valkyrie is a big deal, especially when you think about the fact that the Valkyrie gains equipment at various levels, and at level 17 your Valkyrie gets access to her strongest weapon. And so having a ability to do a +4 on a pre-buff for your Valkyrie is actually pretty important. You know, let's say you only had 15, and you needed that extra 2, that would be 15, 16, 17. You know, so that definitely comes in handy for pre-buffing your Valkyrie, and I would keep that in mind. I'm actually using it right now on my Valkazon to pre-buff my Valkyrie. We also have 30% faster run walk, which means your character is just generally going to run faster. As you can see, when I take it off, I'm not particularly fast, but as soon as I put on the javelin, I gain a pretty decent boost to my run walk speed, which is pretty nice. We also have a 200% enhanced damage, which does vary. So this varies between 150 to 200%, and it is a rather large variable considering the damage of this particular item. And if you happen to find a 200%, it's a really nice find. And if you find an Ethereal 200%, that's an even better find. We have adds 25 to 50 damage, which of course is going to be on the top end of the weapon. So it's just going to be 25 to 50 basically min-max damage, which is very, very nice to increase your physical damage. As you can see, I'm running about... let me make sure I've got all my lightning and like fire damage items off here so we get an accurate representation of the damage that's going on. So 357 to 747, just base physical damage without applying anything, any other effects. And that's not terrible, actually, especially when you consider that Amazons have Critical Strike, which can double that. So you're looking at more like, say, I don't know, 800 to 1600 damage just with a basic attack, which is pretty sweet. We also have a 9% lifesteal, which does vary between 5 to 9%. So it's a pretty big variance there on the lifesteal, and I feel like if you were specifically using this for some melee combat as well, you would really like to have that 9%. We also have 20 to strength and 20 to dex, and this is pretty huge because the strength is going to allow you to equip other equipment much easier, and the dexterity is going to increase your attack rating, it's going to increase your defense, and it's also going to increase your block chance with a shield, and you're going to become a lot tankier. Having 20 dex on an item is definitely going to be very useful as far as keeping your character, alive. We also have a increased stack size, which means this is a larger item, a stack size, than you would have normally on a ceremonial javelin. The base javelin size for ceremonial javelins is actually 80, so we are much higher than normal. And this is important because there is another effect on here that is very important. It's called Replenishes Quantity. So Replenishes Quantity, what it does is when you throw the item, you decrease the number of items in the stack. So down at the bottom of the screen, I'm sure you can see that we have 140 in the stack. And as we throw them, you'll see that the stack slowly decreases until eventually there's nothing left. And the beautiful thing about having the Replenishes Quantity on these spheres is that when you are just sitting there, or it doesn't really matter, at any time, you will notice that the number just slowly replenishes itself. And this actually has a very interesting effect in that when you find an ethereal version of this particular item, you can repair it by using the Replenish Quantity. Now, the non-ethereal items can also be repaired by just simply hitting the repair button and bringing them back up. But the ethereal items cannot. So if you are using the ethereal version of the Titan's Revenge, which I have here, and you throw some javelins off, you will notice that you cannot go to the vendor and repair them. But don't worry, because if you wait a little while, you will notice that, that it will replenish on its own.
Good evening.
Now, the interesting thing about this is that you kind of need a second pair. So, I've noticed this myself is when I'm playing a Javazon specifically, and I have the Ethereal Titans, and I'm using them as my main item. They don't replenish quickly enough for me to have just one set. I usually end up needing a second set, which I either keep on my alternate hand, or I keep inside of my Herodric cube, so that in the event that one runs out, I can take it off, I can put it in the cube, put the other one on, and then therefore I can, swap back and forth, and I don't have to worry about going to town and waiting for a little while for my Titans to repair themselves. Alternatively, you could have a non-ethereal version handy, just in case your ethereal ones run out, and then you can swap back to your ethereal ones when they have repaired. The interesting thing about the Ethereal is that they are just really nice damage, but the downside is that they do take a little while to replenish, so to keep that in mind. Now, the beautiful thing about Titans is that it is just an exceptional level item, which means it can be upgraded. So if you would like to, you can actually upgrade Titans to the Matriarchal Javelin from the Ceremonial Javelin. Now, this particular version has increased damage, so let me put the Ethereals next to each other and the non-Ethereals next to each other. So the non-Ethereal version goes from 79 to 212 to 130 to 248 throw damage. We also get 79 to 155 on the one-handed to 115 to 212. So a pretty nice increase in the damage, even on the non-Ethereal version. And the recipe isn't really that ridiculous, so it might be worth it if you've got the runes laying around. Although do keep in mind that the level goes up to 55, the strength requirement goes up to 107, and the dexterity requirement goes up to 151. But I wouldn't think about that dexterity requirement too much, because quite honestly, if you're going to build a Javazon, it's probably a good idea to have max block anyway, and so upgrading your Titans to their highest level is going to get you the dex that you require for your max block, and you also have 20 dex on the item, which would hopefully finish it off so you don't have to build it too much higher. Now, the non-ethereal version isn't generally the one people are looking at. The one people are looking at is the ethereal version. And you'll notice that the ethereal version has quite a bit of enhanced damage over the non-ethereal version. So we're looking at 106 to 293 throw damage to 181 to 347. A rather small jump there on the top end, but a rather high jump on the low end. So the variance is going to be much better. We also have a one-handed damage of 106 to 206 that jumps to 160 to 293. So pretty darn sweet. In general, when you look at the physical damage on these particular javelins versus the basic ones, it's a pretty huge jump between the two, especially when you consider the critical strike into the equation, which doubles the damage. So you're looking at a pretty large boost to your overall damage. Let me get my my elemental damage effects off here. So we've got 819 to 1,617 with the Matriarchal Javelin, which can be effectively doubled because of critical strike. So you're looking at about 1,600 to... what is that? I'm terrible at math, I tell you. So 20, 32, so about 3,200. It's about 1,600 to 3,200 physical damage before you really apply any other effects to the equation, and that's pretty darn sweet. Now, the non-ethereal, or sorry, the non-upgraded version is still pretty nice too, at 480 to 1372. So if you don't want to upgrade them for some reason because you were specifically looking at the requirements, that is it's a good reason. Now, the ethereal version does have less requirements, so it has 10 less on the dex and the strength, so 141 instead of 151, and 97 versus 107. So it's not exactly terrible, and the damage bump, I think, is honestly worth it. These are literally one of the best javelins that you can possibly get on a Javazon, and the only other one that really comes close is the T-strokes, and the T-strokes are over here, and we'll talk about these in a separate video, but the reason why these T-strokes actually have a pretty good effect on them is due to the negative enemy lightning resistance. So very specifically, if you are a Lightning Fury Amazon, these strokes actually do work very well. And negative enemy lightning resistance can be extremely effective to take down targets who are very lightning resistant. Anyway, these javelins are without a doubt one of the best sets of javelins that you can have on a Javazon, and if you do have a Javazon who is a max level, eventually you'll probably have a pair of ethereal upgraded Titans, and you'll also probably have a pair of a stack. You'll probably have a stack of Titans and a stack of thunderstrokes laying around ready to use at your beck and call, and you can flip and flop back and forth between them as needed. I think you'll find that the Titans tend to be superior on monsters that are not lightning resistant, and I think you'll find that the thunderstrokes are superior versus those targets that are lightning resistant. It really depends on the monster specifically. You know, if you come across a monster that's 90% lightning resistant, the T-strokes are going to win. If you come across a monster that's 0% lightning resistant, the Titans are going to win every single time. And there's also the physical damage component to take into account. So when you're comparing Titans to the T-strokes, the Titans do tend to have a bit of a damage sort of like headway over the T-strokes. So they will be dealing more physical damage as opposed to more lightning damage. I think the T-strokes are specifically revolved around that lightning damage. But they do have a rather massive amount of lightning damage on top of the negative resistance, which is really sweet. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.